In this week's episode of Studio Inter, we'll be digging deep and analyzing all aspects of Inter's 19th Scudetto winning season. We'll be discussing Conte, Marotta, who was the best player, who was the most important player, how do Inter move on, this week's Moggi, Moratti and Frog, and much, much more. Everything here on Studio Inter, only on SempreInter.com.
Noi campioni d'Italia, l'Inter è campione d'Italia, l'Inter è campione d'Italia.
Benvenuti, bentornati to the most enjoyable episode of Studio Inter that I think all of us will ever have recorded, and hopefully you all will have ever enjoyed, because for the first time since we started doing this podcast about roughly 8-9 years ago, it is the Scudetto winning podcast. We did it. It's done. It's dusted. It's finished. We're here. And before we get to all of that, let me introduce my panelist. He is the artist still known as Mr. Positivity and forever known as Mr. Positivity, because when the shit hit the fan, he was the only one who said Inter will win the Scudetto, Mr. Mohamed Nasser.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so happy to be finally recording this. It's very surreal to say the Scudetto winning podcast. I've been married for 10 years. My wife has only known me suffering. She doesn't really believe that Inter are a good side, you know. And now that they won, it's very surreal. Very excited to get onto this episode.
For sure. And we're also joined by our good friend from Canada. He's a producer over on TSN, and he's also our in-house refereeing expert, Mr. Michael Gallo.
Campioni d'Italia. Let's go. Oh, yeah. What a feeling. What a feeling, guys. I'm so happy to be here. Emotions are all over the place. And I'm so excited to talk all about positive thoughts and great feelings that we've all been going through the last 24 hours, and so many negative thoughts in the last decade or so. But let's talk about this. I'm so excited to talk to everybody about this, about the Scudetto.
For sure. And we're also joined by the chief news editor on SempreInter.com, Mr. William Beckman. How are you doing?
I'm doing splendidly well for the first time since I started following this club. So that's good news. I'm just wondering, if somebody had told you about 8 or 9 years ago it was going to take you 184 episodes before you could record a trophy celebration episode, what would you have said?
That would have been pretty much after the treble, and I was still high off of the treble, and I'd be like, it's okay, because
we'll win it. We'll get to be another year or so.
Yeah. No, it was. I mean, I remember I basically said that season with Mourinho, the way it panned out, I was like, I'd rather have this happiness now and then, not feel it for a couple of years. But
for a couple of years.
Yes, but 10. I mean, no one argued for 10 years. I mean,
I did. I've admitted this before on this podcast. It is my fault. I prayed to the gods on the Barcelona semi-final. I said, if we get through this, I will take 10 years of nothing. But sorry, my bad, guys.
No, it's not your bad, because I think most of us would have done the same, or did do the same, because the way that season was and everything surrounding it, the Barcelona, the Mourinho, contro tutto e tutti, everything about that, it was the perfect Inter storm. But it was also, you'd rather burn up than slowly fade away. And that's exactly what happened. Mourinho burned the house down, and then he just left. And then since then, we've been slowly rebuilding the house, and it's a completely new house. It's a completely new Inter. It's a completely new everything. And it happened. It happened with Antonio Conte. It happened during the most difficult and challenging season that I can remember in a very long time that Inter have gone through. We're going to go through all of that. But let's start with it. I mean, let's start at the very beginning, in the sense that let's rewind 24 hours. How were you guys following it, and what was your reaction? I think I said a few weeks ago that this was I thought that Crotone was the game that we were going to win it. It was, by latest Sampdoria, but I thought a win against Crotone, and because I thought Atalanta would drop points against Sassuolo, and that game in and of itself was absolutely insane. But let's start there. I mean, were you following it, and what was your immediate reactions and stuff? Let's start with you, Mo. What were you following the game? What was your thought? How did you react? Did you believe it?
I was following the game. Fortunately, our good friend Will Beckman had put out a tweet yesterday. The day
I
before.
knew you were going to say this.
Yeah. Like a gentle reminder to anybody with any expectation that I think it was in the last 6 games, Atalanta had destroyed Sassuolo by a margin of 3 goals in every single encounter between the two sides. So there was practically no hope. So I kind of sort of reluctantly had the game on. I was watching it, and then there was that sending off. And suddenly, your ears perk up and the hairs kind of stand on the back of your neck. And then Atalanta score, and you're like, this is it. It's not going to happen. And I sort of moved away from the screen, just not to. It was very tense. But then when Sassuolo equalized, yeah, it was pretty wild, man. It was I haven't, like we've spoken about, feeling of tension and I don't think I felt this tense about a game since possibly the Empoli game, the Spalletti's last match, because like we said, Conte games have been always, even the final against Sevilla last year didn't feel like this. And it was nice because you knew, you were going to get at least a point against Sampdoria. So it was all the good tension and none of the bad. It was a lovely afternoon yesterday. Really, a really lovely afternoon.
It absolutely was, and it absolutely turned out to be. Mike, what about you? I mean, because I'm thinking of the time difference. This was all going on when you just woke up, I guess. How were you going through this?
Yeah, I think in normal circumstances, non-pandemic, I would have gotten together with a couple of friends of mine. Shout out to my buddies Nick Marchio and Ralph Bonadillo, who I probably would have watched with, but obviously we've got a lockdown going on in Canada, so we're not allowed to. But we're in close contact. I watched it by myself. I thought this game was crazy. Like, this game was absolutely nuts. There was so much going on, and just as a neutral watching this game, I was just, my heart was racing because, even though there's so many games left that Inter, it was inevitable they were going to do it anyways. But at the same time, you want to get it done. And I thought for sure with that red card and penalty at the end, there was going to be some extra drama. What a crazy finish with Consigli making the save. I just was emphatic. I mean, listen, this wasn't like, I would say, the emotions that we would have probably had, like, compared to, say, when I think it was the 2009 in that Roma game. Was it 2009 or 2010 when we won the Scudetto? Like, came down to the last game, everything is just going crazy. But this one was, I would say, just the game itself was crazy. But we knew the eventual outcome was going to be there, whether it be next week or the week after. It was going to happen. But watching this game, it was just exciting. Just with the drama at the end too. I really had a lot of fun. I didn't really until I woke up this morning and then, oh wow, Inter won the Scudetto. What happened here? And it would have been nice to have some kind of like celebration, like with friends and stuff. But at the same time, we're glad it happened, and we'll take it as we get it.
Without a doubt. I mean, Will, you were, as Mo alluded to, you weren't exactly expecting a lot. How did you experience this and watching this in real life? I mean, first of all, Golini getting sent off, then Atalanta scored the first goal, then Berardi, of all people, the Inter fan, Berardi scores the penalty that secures the title for Inter, and then they get a sending off as well, and they get a penalty which Luis Muriel, who's been linked to Inter, misses. I mean, if ever a game had caught the Pazza Inter bug, it would be that game, no?
Yeah, we're contagious, to use a popular word at the moment. No, the tweet that Mo refers to was very much my expectations heading into this weekend. The last 6 games between Atalanta and Sassuolo have ended before yesterday. They've ended with an aggregate score of 25-6. I've just counted it up. So, and that includes a 5-1 and a 6-2 and a 4-1. And so I had absolutely no expectation, like you, that this was going to be sealed this weekend. And to be honest, I wasn't necessarily annoyed about that, because it meant that we'd be able to do it, on the pitch, winning the title after a game, and that would have been nice. But obviously, when you get down to that last half an hour and suddenly you realise it's possible, then obviously you just want it done as quickly as possible. I must admit, I didn't see the game apart from the last 15 minutes. First, because it wasn't on the telly here in the UK. They had the Napoli match on, which obviously was a decision they probably would have taken before they knew that Inter were going to be potentially riding their title hopes on that game. But I was also sort of watching a couple of other things as well at the time. So I only saw the last 15 minutes, but it was a stream without commentary. So I put on Rai, the radio, who were doing their sort of ground-to-ground coverage of the 3 games that were going on at the same time, and sort of synced it up so that I could get the sort of a feel of what was going on. And it kind of all seemed a little bit surreal, but it didn't look as if there was going to be a goal by the time I got on, apart from when it got into stoppage time, and there was something that was cleared off the line, I think, in stoppage time, and a couple of other things that happened. So it was all a little bit surreal. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, the radio commentator said those words that sort of will live in the memory for years to come, when he sort of very suddenly interrupts his commentary and goes, "Attenzione, sono le 16:51 e l'Inter è campione d'Italia." And that was basically why I tuned in, because I wanted to hear the live moment as it happened, because the stream wasn't very good, so it wouldn't have actually really done justice to the scale of the moment. So yeah, I was quite amused until the last sort of 20 minutes or so, and I've just sort of been slightly in a daze since. I don't know if I've really sort of processed it yet as we're speaking now. I've been writing up interviews all day for the site, and this is, I'm not used to writing up good news in this position, so it's been very strange. And I'm still not, as I stand here now, as I said, I picked up Inter after, I basically was in the same predicament as the site. I hadn't experienced a trophy yet, so this is not something that I'm used to processing. So it may take me until the end of the season, maybe until the trophy is actually lifted in the stadium to really let it all sink in. But yeah, it's amazing. To do it with 4 games left as well is really, really emphatic. I think more than anything, that's the thing that really shocks me, because I don't think it was completely inconceivable that this was going to happen this year, but I didn't think it was going to happen with 4 games left. So it's all a little bit surreal, but it's good that we have this sort of cathartic experience to share it all with each other. And just all the reactions on social media was what made it for me. Just seeing everyone give their own little anecdote about maybe where they were the last time they won the title, or seeing fans in Milan sort of celebrating semi-responsibly, shall we say, and all the reactions of the players. Bastoni's friend published an Instagram story of him watching the game as it ended, and he was delighted. So all in all, it was a lovely day, but I'm still not quite sure I've processed it all, to be honest.
Well, for sure. Let's talk about that. What you said about, we have to process this, and we have to start talking about how this actually happened. I think that's a good way to start when you process things. And I mean, this has been a project that pretty much since the 6th of June 2016, when Suning took over, this was their goal. And I mean, Suning write history in becoming the first non-Italian ownership to win the Scudetto. Steven Zhang becomes the youngest president in Italian football to ever win a Serie A title. I mean, there's so many records that are broken. Antonio Conte now only has Fabio Capello, Marcello Lippi, Max Allegri, Max Allegri, Capello, and Trapattoni, I think, as well. He's got Trapattoni, Lippi, Capello, and Allegri ahead of him as coaches who have won more Scudetti. He has 4 now in the Serie A, and 5 if you look at if you can count the title in Chelsea. And it happened in the most, in the most surreal and weird season. I mean, we were all well aware of all the problems, and Inter basically starting the season, limping into the season on the back of last season, where there were a lot of arguing and fighting, and he wasn't happy because the project was frozen, to quote him. And yet he got those players he got who were supposed to lift the team, and they did anything but, except for Darmian. And then the crashing in the Champions League, playing some dreary, horrible football. And then comes Christmas, and we're thinking, okay, so the January depression is about to take its hold, and it actually goes pretty well in January. And then after the defeat against Sampdoria, Inter go on an unbeaten run, starting with a game in the Coppa Italia against Fiorentina, where Eriksen is begun to be rehabilitated, and so is Perisic. And then Inter become a machine, an unstoppable machine. We got to kind of talk about this. I mean, I don't think there's only one person that is important in all of this. But if there's one person that I think it's suitable and only right that he's praised first in this success, it is Beppe Marotta. He's the brain behind this success. Everything he's done. What do you guys? I mean, what do you think, Mo? I mean, who would you like to lift first of all, and what feelings have you got around what Marotta has done here?
Yeah, no, I mean, we've spoken about Marotta before. I for sure he is the architect of this. Hopefully, what's going to become a new cycle, for sure. But we've also spoken about, if you really go, we made fun of Tahir, but Tahir is the reason why we were able to sell to Suning. Suning are the reason why they were ambitious enough to bring in the right person. I mean, we've seen Pallotta really make all the wrong decisions with similar sorts of investments at Roma, in terms of bringing in the wrong sporting directors, the wrong club CEOs, not the right people to run the project. So, of course, Marotta is the architect of this project, and of course, he deserves all the praise for what he's done. But fundamentally, I think, like you said right now, Nima, there isn't one person that you can really single out, because it's been such a team effort, particularly so this season. But I think for me, I'm just very grateful to Suning. I'm grateful to Suning for sure for starting this project, and Marotta for executing the plans well. But also, you can't say this without saying I'm grateful to Conte for being able to insulate the team from all the turbulence and turmoil that has surrounded Suning this season, and all the shitstorm that has followed with the capital restrictions and investment restrictions by the Chinese government, and loss of revenue, so on and so forth. So even at that managerial, directorial level, you can't really single one person out, I feel. It's been such a team effort from top all the way through down to the bottom. And the fact that Conte has been able to, on his own social media, praise the cafeteria staff, the ground staff, the physical recovery team, it really shows how much went in behind the scenes, behind just those 11 or 25 players in the squad, or whoever many that really went into this really amazing, really spectacular season in the most difficult of circumstances. People, naysayers, might say that this is a weak Juventus, or that Milan are this or that, but really the conditions are suboptimal, and to be able, like Will said, to be able to do this with 4 matches in hand is nothing short of spectacular. So I mean, again, I'm on cloud nine. I can't find the words to praise the effort, the project, Conte, the team, anyone enough.
Mike,
Listen. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nima. Go ahead.
No, I sense you wanted to say something, so I thought I'd let you hit it.
Well, yeah. Mo touched on something really, unique that I kind of wanted to talk about as well. He mentioned the physical recovery team, the team doctors. That's important. And you look at Inter this year, they didn't really have many injuries. Nothing really significant. I mean, Sensi would be the only one that really has been caught the plague the last year or so. But the team stayed healthy, and that is so important. And that was a huge factor. When you've got a team that, especially with a lot of depth like Inter has, when you've got a team that's staying relatively healthy, I know luck has a little bit to do with it, but when your team is healthy and when you've made the investment to bring in these types of players, their health is one of the most important things, and they stayed healthy, and that was a really crucial factor here. Because how many times in the last 5, 6, 7 years where Inter had just like so many guys injured, and just you really can't get chemistry with a squad out there. So I think that was an important factor. Now I look at championship teams and all sports, whether it be club or national or top to bottom. I think you look at them and you say there is consistency in terms of leadership on the field, off the field, at every level. And Inter had the squad. Conte made the right decision in terms of players to bring in. Marotta went in and he took care of that for Conte. He said, these are the players that we want. But Marotta made it happen, and Suning and Zhang made the investment. So from top to bottom, that level of that ladder, they all came together. When you look at these championship teams, they all have the similarities. What kind of word is that? But anyways, they all have the similarities of top to bottom. It all works.
Without a doubt. I mean, if we're just going to talk about Conte, because I think that I think he deserves it because of the everything that Mo said that he had to deal with throughout this season. I personally think that this is at club level, his winning the Scudetto with Inter is at club level Antonio Conte's greatest achievement in his career, because it's one thing to win with what he did with Chelsea was phenomenal. In and of itself. I mean, the way he kind of adapted, and it was similar to what he did at Inter. He had to adapt, and he had to create. He started playing 3-5-2. It didn't work, and so he adapted to the squad and played the 3-4-3. But at the end of the day, that Chelsea side, he still got to spend a lot of money. He had an N'Golo Kante, he had a Hazard, Diego Costa. Here at Inter, he had to build that himself. There was not that much there for him to refine as it was at Chelsea, as he had at Chelsea. And I think same thing with Juve. I mean, Juve, they made Marotta again gave him the players he needed to a certain extent, and you really didn't know what to expect. I mean, that was a Juve that had just finished 7th the year before, but he got the best out of him. But to me, given the how it's been at Inter these 2 years and how difficult it's been in this environment and everything that we've spoken extensively about on this podcast, I think for me this is his masterpiece in terms not just in results wise, but also the football they've played. It's a very modern form of football, an expansive form of football that makes Inter very unpredictable. I mean, one of the things that Conte has been criticized for is that his teams are very predictable. I think that in my opinion, after February, after the Sampdoria defeat, when everything just clicked, Inter are incredibly unpredictable. As Serge Cosmi said himself after the game, we knew exactly how Inter were going to attack, but we were absolutely unable to stop them nonetheless. I think that speaks a lot to how he's developed as well. This isn't the same Antonio Conte we saw at Juve. I'd argue even that this isn't even the same Antonio Conte who took over at Inter in his first season. The development that he's undergone, the journey that he's undergone, and what he's done together with these players is what I find absolutely extraordinary. And I think it should be praised. Will, I want to hear your thoughts on the Conte thing, because I mean, you've always said that Conte's football, when it works, it's a marching band, and I guess and I think that's a really good analogy, because well, that marching band has been playing beautifully these past 3-4 months.
Yeah, he's shown that he's created a team that is not just reliant on one sort of game plan anymore, which actually kind of belies the marching band theory. The analogy was made a few years ago on the telly because his teams had one way of playing football, and if it didn't work, then things wouldn't work. The team wouldn't know how to do anything else. He wouldn't know how to coach anything else. And actually, I do think that the analogy is maybe slightly outdated now because of what you said. He has shown that he's able to mold a team into something slightly different. And
can we say that maybe the marching band has learned to play several songs then? More than one song.
I don't know. Has it become an orchestra? Has it?
I think it has. You see that's why I want to hear what you think, because I think
it's become an orchestra. Yeah, it's not got one. God, this is why you should prepare analogies before you come on air, because I've got no idea what I want to say now. Anyway, let's say the marching band has become an orchestra, because that sounds quite good. No, but he has managed to develop teams. I mean, he has developed teams before. He didn't turn up at Juventus hoping to play 3-5-2. He did have a bit of adaptability there, given on what he had there. At Chelsea, in his first press conference, he said, I think that the team is. I'm a tailor, and I'm trying to make the best suit given that the players I have available. So it's not as if he's never been flexible before in his career, but there was a very big shift that happened, half the way through this season, when he realised that this was all he had, and that if he wanted to win this Scudetto, which is what he was brought in to do, he would have to reconsider players who he had maybe kind of mentally half discarded. And I'm thinking of Eriksen and Perisic, obviously. In that, also maybe Skriniar as well. I mean, Skriniar was out of the team as well last season before he came back in after he didn't go to Spurs. So I think he's definitely shown a little bit more to him this season in terms of making into more varied. So that's definitely true. In terms of who is most to blame, I find it impossible really to pick one, because I think you've got four people. I will say four people that are on different levels at the club going upwards. Because if you start on the pitch, you've got Lukaku, without whom this team doesn't exist. But Lukaku was only there because Conte wanted him and did everything within his power 2 years ago to make sure that he was signed. But then if you don't go to Conte, he was appointed by Marotta, who came 6 months before him, and was convinced, maybe when others weren't, that was the right decision to get rid of Spalletti and bring in Conte. But then Marotta was brought in by Steven Zhang, who came in at Suning. So,
who, according to Marotta, he left Juventus by mutual termination on the Saturday.
Yeah.
On the Friday. He got a text on the Saturday, and he had signed the contract on Sunday or Monday, or what was it?
Yeah. So Steven was really keen to get him. I mean, Moratti's been full of praise for Steven Zhang. He said, he's a very humble and intelligent person, and he tries to take advice from everyone who he meets, but actually he knows what he's doing. And I think that was a really good sign of it. Conte was linked to Inter, what was it, that summer of 2017. They wanted him before this. So that he knew what he wanted and he got it. So I think you can maybe, you can make a difference between which player is the most important and which director is the most important. But I find it difficult really because I don't think it's fair to do down anyone else by any of those four people that I've just said, Lukaku, Conte, Marotta, Zhang. I don't think this could have happened if any one of those four had not been there. They've all had their moments. I mean, if you're looking at maybe November and December when things were going wrong and Conte was being, criticised from all quarters, ourselves included, he found the right solution. He went back to what he knew. He convinced the players that they needed to do X, Y, and Z to start winning games. Marotta in January and February was crucial when the players weren't getting paid and Suning were nowhere to be seen. But then, Suning were the ones that invested 700 million or whatever 2 summers ago to get Lukaku and to sign Eriksen and to sign all the players that came before that. So it's, there's that saying that always comes up in Italy, which is that, players win games, but clubs win leagues. And I think that's all we can say now is we have a very clear structure in terms of the club, which was something that we didn't have and that we were always bemoaning until 4 or 5 years ago. Certainly when Suning came in, that was the thing that was completely all over the place. Just the way that everyone was sort of communicating with each other and the chain of command was all over the place. That's now all in place. And without that, you can't really win a league title. So sorry to sit on the fence, but credit to everyone, really.
No. I think everyone has raised some really important points, and I think it is a collective thing here. I think that's the point here, that Suning have built a structure in place here, not just off the pitch, not just on the pitch, but also off it, and surrounding the technical staff. I mean, Mike, as you were talking about Pintus, and this was a very difficult season. Every single sports, health person and doctor said that we're going to have loads of injuries because of the congested fixture list. The players have not had time to recover, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And still Inter have barely had an injury. And a lot of that is thanks to Pintus, the athletic coach or the athletic manager or whatever his official title is, but he's the person who's in charge of keeping these guys fit, and he's done an excellent job at that. That's also part of it. So we should give credit where credit is due, but looking forward now, where do Inter go from here? That seems to be the $1 million question, or whichever currency you prefer. What matters now is, how do you build upon this? Beppe Marotta is completely convinced that the most important thing to do now is the most important thing that Inter can do now. He made a very clear point of every single every single media statement that or interview he's made since yesterday, that the second star would be absolutely beautiful. Not just winning another Scudetto, but the second star, which Inter now are just one away from. And I think that's a big goal. But also, I think in Europe, let's start with a European angle there. Antonio Conte has never really succeeded in Europe except for the Europa League, which was played after the league was finished due to the pandemic and everything that happened in following that. Do we think that, how far do we think that this particular Inter can go in the Champions League? And also, secondary question, what is missing in terms of traits, tactical or technical traits, players that in your opinion, that to take that next step? I'll start with you, Mike. What do you think?
Well, look, I think on paper, this should be a minimal quarterfinal Champions League team. I wouldn't say they're ready to win it. Listen, the Scudetto just happened. Let's take a step back, enjoy it. But I think that now that this is, we've gotten this, I think that becomes the next step. In terms of, listen, I think the only weakness at times this team has really had has been in goal, really. And I don't think it's even Handanovic has been that bad this year. I think we had a great season, but at times where he has let us down. And I think it is a position that we can upgrade on. I think what this team needs is the experience, working together, playing together. And as they gel together, they will play better. And maybe that's what this Scudetto is going to help. I'm not really sure in terms of improvements. I don't think there's improvements up top that can be made. You mentioned at the top of the show that Muriel could be a player that could be added. Someone that could definitely be a help because Lautaro isn't the most consistent of players. He's definitely extremely talented, but doesn't show up every game. So that's something that's definitely another striker could help. I love our midfield, and I love our center backs, and I love our defense with De Vrij and Bastoni and Skriniar. I love everything we have in terms of our player talent. It's working together that I think over time, we've got this experience this year, and I think over time playing together and going into next year that it will really help in Champions League.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you on the quarterfinal thing. If we just take the European angle, the quarterfinal is for sure is absolutely realistic. And I think that given how Inter have played so far and performed this season, especially
group stage
after
both times, so I think that's I think next year will be a very important step in terms of getting out of the group stage. And once they do, I think that's when the real challenge will begin in terms of getting better.
Oh, for sure. I agree with you there. I think winning it is difficult for any Italian team. I think given the difference in revenue and turnaround and or annual revenue that between the EPL sides and the big Spanish and French teams and the Italian teams, I don't think we can realistically see any Italian teams seriously consider for Champions League just quite yet. I think we're a few years away from that. But I mean, sure, I think a quarterfinal is absolutely realistic. But Mo, first of all, do you think quarterfinal is realistic? And also building on that, what do you think is needed, is lacking to take that next step and develop this Inter to maybe even go to a semi-final or a final?
Let me preface this by tooting my own horn for a second. Not only did I, a lot of people predicted Scudetto, but last year I was telling you guys, second place and a Europa League win. Of course, we came short in the Europa League, but again, it's not to say that I got a crystal ball or anything. But what I mean is, I really think that this team is very special. I think there are certain things that need to happen for continuity's sake. For reinforcement's sake, for taking that next step, but the basis, the foundations of the squad are rock solid, and I think something really special can be built around what you already have in terms of like we said, an aggregate of management, directors, back office staff, squad staff, and players, including the manager. So I don't know where we can go next year in Europe, but I know that quarterfinal is definitely should definitely be a target. I think that the primary objective, of course, should be getting that second star. Just Marotta's words yesterday got me feeling super excited, and it's lovely thinking about that second star on the jersey and then taking that next step as a legacy, as a history, as a cementing that cycle, putting some distance between us and Milan in terms of number of Scudetti won, getting that second star, the whole thing. But also, I think Conte has evolved as a manager, and there's been a lot of discussion just yesterday and today in the media about how potentially there's this narrative that Conte tried to play this daring football in the beginning and it failed, so he reverted back to his norms, which was more pragmatic, effective football, and that's why Inter won. They played defense first football, but that certainly is an untrue narrative. The second part of the season, the first part of the second half of the return leg was spectacular football, was dominant football, was amazing football, was champagne football, was Conte bragging on Instagram about his tiki-taka football. This was the sort of football that was played. So I think for sure Conte has evolved as a manager. For sure the club has grown and learned from its mistakes collectively with Moratti guiding Zhang and explaining the problems that had happened post treble. So I think definitely Scudetto next season is not a requirement, but a very tangible dream for all of us to have, and really becoming a relevant player. A quarterfinalist in Europe is not a relevant player in Europe. I think Inter should aim to become a protagonist in Europe as soon as possible. You've reached the Europa League final, which is a real thing, and I think there's looking at the teams in the semis this year. I don't see any reason as to why our squad, regardless of what had happened, what had transpired this season, but our current squad cannot match up with the best of them.
That's a good point. I want to hear your reaction to that, Will. Where are you on this? Do you agree, or are you a little bit more careful?
I think at the moment this team is not strong enough to reach the semi-final of the Champions League unless they have a very favourable draw. I do see a slight difference, mostly in terms of tempo with those four teams and maybe experience as well. I think that obviously Italy, there's been a lot of talk in Italy at the moment about how they had no teams in the quarterfinals of the Champions League again, and the problem is that these teams are kind of overwhelmed in terms of rhythm when they go into Europe. And we saw what happened to Roma at Old Trafford last week. I think that a quarter-final is realistic, or at least possible or achievable with this team. That's what Max Allegri said last month when he went on to Sky, and he said that already this team is probably good enough to reach the quarterfinals. And who knows, if we had been playing like we were in January and February, in November and December, then we might well have reached the quarterfinals this year. I think that's possible. We've definitely got out of the group because, to be honest, we should have got out of the group anyway. But unfortunately, we were still sort of working ourselves out at that stage, and you can't go back and play the Champions League groups again. So we had to leave that and move on. But I think this team is already good enough for the last 16. Obviously, then if you finish second in your group and you go up against Bayern Munich in the last 16, you won't make the quarterfinals. So you need help from the draw as well. So I would say it's definitely good enough for the last 16. It's potentially good enough to reach the quarterfinals. I don't think it's good enough to reach the semi-finals. I think we would need another striker, not necessarily to start, but to reduce the load on Lukaku and Lautaro throughout the season if you're fighting on two fronts. I think maybe another midfielder who's got a bit more dynamism, which someone like a Barella. Potentially another, an equivalent of Hakimi on the left, because Perisic has been fantastic. I hope he can do that for another season, but he won't be able to do it for 50 games a season if you're playing in the league in Europe. And obviously the goalkeeper is another issue. I feel bad sort of bitching on Handanovic after he's just won his first trophy at the club for 9 years, but I don't see a team in the Champions League semi-final starting with Sami Handanovic really. But I think that the depth is maybe more of the issue than the starting 11 in terms of looking at what's needed for Europe. Because as you said, we reached the Europa League final because it was, well, not just because, but in part because it was detached from the league season. The Champions League doesn't exist in its own vortex. Like if we just played the Champions League and nothing else mattered, then we probably could reach that stage of the tournament. But you've got a league game on the Wednesday, you've got a league game on the Saturday, then a game on the Wednesday, then a game on the Saturday, and they could be huge games, and you can't afford really to rest anyone in all of those games. So, you need multiple options, quality options, which we don't have. And at the moment, there are still areas of the squad, particularly in defence, which I hadn't mentioned yet, where the gap between the starters and the reserves is very notable. Thankfully, that didn't matter in the league because we have just had the league for a couple of months, about give or take a few Coppa Italia matches. But so that's where I would necessarily probably see the problem at the moment. But I definitely think it needs strengthening because this team has been great for 4 or 5 months, but we know that it's not perfect, and we know that the rivals may well be strong even in the league next year. So I definitely wouldn't be recommending that we stay as we are, if indeed we can.
No, absolutely not. And I think that's a good point. I mean, if we're going to make it into like a bit more concrete, for me, it's very simple. It's Simi from Crotone as a backup to Lukaku. It's Rodrigo De Paul for the midfield. You don't sell any of the other midfielders except for Vecino and Gagliardini if you have to, or get rid of them, one of them. You cash in on the João Marios and the Naingolans and the, if possible, Valentino Lazaro. Or if Conte thinks that he can rehabilitate Valentino Lazaro as a backup player or on the right wing and play Hakimi on the left as he's done at Borussia Dortmund, or if he likes options. But for me, Di Marco, Simi, De Paul, and one of Cragno or Musso is that would be a dream mercato. And I mean, I said earlier that I think winning this league title was Antonio Conte's greatest achievement at club level. I mean, if he were to win the Champions League with Inter, that would cement him. I mean, that would even, that would cement him on a level, take him past Trapattoni. That would literally be his greatest achievement ever. Mike, any thoughts on that?
Well, look, I think this is Conte's best achievement as a manager. I want to bring us back though. 5 years ago, when it was at Euro 2016, and Conte was managing the Azzurri, and he took a absolutely terrible team to the quarterfinals, losing in penalties to the World Cup champions, Germany. And this is what Conte did with going that far. These are the players that he had who, by the way, in their first game, they beat, I'm just going to look at, the situation of comparing Inter now to what he had in 2016. They beat Belgium in the first game, and these were his players: Eder, Graziano Pelle, Giaccarini, Parolo, Candreva. These are starters. These are not backups. These are starters. And he beat Belgium 2-0 with players like De Bruyne, Lukaku, Hazard, Nainggolan, Vertonghen, Vermaelen. Quality wasn't even close, and he was able to do that. So had Conte beaten Germany in the quarterfinals, potentially made a semifinal or a final, I think this probably would be, almost similar in terms of not just, obviously it's not club level, but in terms of accomplishments as a manager. Having said that, they didn't win that game against Germany, and so be it. Had that gone the other way, I think these would have been very comparable. But look, he's taken a team in a very short period of time from an embarrassment to champions. And it's really, one of the most difficult things to do is especially when you've got a team that's won, a decade's worth of Scudetti, and then all of a sudden we've got a new champion, and becoming a new champion is got to be one of the most difficult things to do. And Conte did it, and that's why I think this is his best accomplishment as a manager.
Well, one thing, one of the reasons we've spoken about a little bit, touched on a little bit, the reason why Inter could do this is because of Suning, but it's quite clear that Suning do have liquidity issues and everything that we've discussed already on this pod through the past few months. But I think it's important to ask this question now that the Inter have won the Scudetto, now that they've put this in place. I mean, given, only they can answer this question because nobody really knows, and Suning are very good at keeping their cards very close to their chest. But if Inter, as we're seeing today, might have to sell a big player or one or two players like a Lautaro or a Eriksen or whatever, I mean, then I think that are Suning really the right people to stay at Inter? Because isn't it better in that case to just, okay, you did this, but life happens, it didn't work out, sell and move on to someone who can actually build on this? Because I think that what we're seeing now is actually like Mo said, everything is there for a cycle to be won now, and to start dismantling this would be insane. So the question is, are Suning the right people to take it forward? Mo, what do you think?
Yeah, I think 100% they are the right person to be able to, the right entity to be able to decide what's best for Inter's future. I think they have in the 2.5 or 3 years or whatever, however long it's been since they've been around, I think they built more than enough good karma and equity with us as a fan base to trust them with the project. So I think there can be no doubt that if they do decide not to sell and do decide to continue with Inter, that they understand the magnitude of the responsibility that they have then undertaken to or decided or agreed to take on, and will make sure that they deliver to the best of their ability, of course, but in good faith, to try and deliver on the potential promise of continuing with the project. And if they can't, in fact, move on with that project, then I think that they will, in good faith, find out what's best for Inter in terms of whether it's a capital raise or a potential sale or a minority stake or whatever it is that they do decide to do. But I think, like in summary or in summa, I want to say I think I trust them in taking the right decision, whether it is remaining with the club. And if they do decide to remain, then I'm pretty sure that they're going to do so with the best of intentions and the best of abilities.
I think that's a really good point. But I mean, before we just touching, what do we think is going to happen? I mean, Antonio Conte and Marotta have been Marotta said, I'm very happy here. I want to continue. I think everything is here to continue this. And Conte has basically said, look, I just want to enjoy this, but it's quite clear in the past that he says, in the past few weeks, he said he doesn't want to restart everything all the time. I mean, what do we think this is going to happen? I mean, is it because they're going to have a meeting about this pretty soon to start planning, because they've been kicking this can down the road, and now that Zhang is in Milan, he has to deliver some news about what's going to happen. We've heard everyone from BC Partners to Saudi Arabian royal investment firms to everyone under the sun, but nothing concrete, and we haven't really heard anything more than that. Now is the time to make that decision, and it seems, based on what we're hearing from Suning coming out, is that they've secured a loan, a bridge loan, to take him to the end of the season, and they're looking for investors. I mean, what do we think is going to happen here? Do we think Conte stays? Do we think Marotta looks like he's going to stay, but based on what he said yesterday? And do we think Conte stays? And do we think that the project is now unfrozen? What do you think, Will?
Well, it depends what you mean by project. If by project you mean big investments, then no, it's not unfrozen, because with Suning in charge, there won't be big investments in the summer. That's pretty much the one thing that we do know with reasonable certainty heading into the summer. I think that what will probably happen is that Conte and Marotta will stay, and that Suning will get the loan, and then they'll find a shareholder, or they'll buy out Lion Rock share and look to give it to someone else in the next few months. That seems to be where it's headed. They have never at any point given any credence in public to the idea that they're going to be selling Inter. They've not spoken much, but when they have, they've made it very clear that they aren't going anywhere. You need to look at the really angry statement they gave to Beppe Sala, the mayor of Milan, a couple of months ago, when he was asking them for clarity over the ownership situation in order to proceed with the San Siro project. For them, they've never given any hint that they're considering leaving the club. So I think they will probably stay. That does mean, of course, that it's going to have to be a self-financed mercato like it was before. We can't be certain that Conte and Marotta will stay under those circumstances, because number one, they've made it clear that they don't know what the future holds. So we can't know if they don't know. They need to talk with Steven Zhang at the end of the month. If they are satisfied that they number one, they think that it's got a future, this kind of project, in inverted commas, that's number one. Number two, if they think that Suning are going to be able to, hold a sort of a communicative line that everyone can agree on, then I think that's quite important as well. Conte's made it clear that it's okay if we don't necessarily strengthen the squad, as long as you make it clear to everyone else that I'm not expected to go and win the Champions League with this squad, because we haven't got the resources to do it. So I think making sure that everyone's on the same page in terms of, number one, what can be done in terms of signings, but number two, what is expected off the back of that, is very important. That was really what Conte was getting at last year when he was having a go at everyone in public, because he thought that he'd been hung out to dry, because people thought he was supposed to win the Scudetto, and he wasn't convinced that was the agreement with the players that were signed. So it's sort of a complex issue, and there are so many questions at the moment that haven't been answered. Who is going to be Inter's main shirt sponsor for next season? We don't know that yet. Pirelli are leaving, and Suning are still kind of sounding out companies in China, and then in America, and then this, that, and the other. What's going to happen with the stadium? Suning clearly are very invested in this stadium project, which is another sign that they don't want to leave. They see this as an incentive down the road, something that they're going to be able to benefit from. That they don't want to sell the club to someone else who's then going to reap the benefits from that stadium. So that's another thing that probably is persuading them to stay. You've got to be, as you said, we don't know, but Conte doesn't know either. So it's going to, this next month has to be the month of clarity. Whatever happens, fine. Yeah. If it's going to be another austerity mercato, then okay, but let's sort that out and let's make sure that everyone is on the same page. And to answer your question from before about whether Suning are the right people to stay, there is no perfect solution here, but I do think that they are the right people to stay at this point. Number one, because if they leave now, then the next season, it is completely up in the air, because you've got no time to plan for it now. And number two, if Suning leave, there is no guarantee that Conte and Marotta will stay. And I think it's a bigger risk if they leave, that those two will be leaving, than if they stay with, quite big restrictions on what can be spent, because at that point it is a new project. And generally, if new owners come in, they want their own men. Marotta came in, and one of the first things he did was appoint Conte. So I don't see that those two necessarily could stay with another owner. Maybe they would, but that's always a really uncomfortable situation. We've seen that Paulo Fonseca has basically had zero public support from Roma's owners, and they've been there for about a year. It's not a secret that they want to move him on. That's generally what happens. So I hope Suning stay, and I hope that these things get sorted quickly, because it's fine to not be, spreading everything across the media. We've been banging on for years about how Inter leak too many things to the media, but this is now the time to get your house in order and move forward. And I hope that this team doesn't need a revolution.
No, so, tweaks.
And that is possible if people work intelligently, and we have one of the most intelligent directors.
Oh, the most intelligent directors. I was speaking to a journalist yesterday in Italy who says that basically Beppe Marotta these 12 months alone has schooled everyone on how to be a director in difficult circumstances. Ha mandato tutti a scuola was the term that he used. Basically, Antonio Conte, there is an issue here, and that is that Antonio Conte's contract expires in exactly 13 months. You don't want to go into the last year of that contract, or do you? What do we think here? What about you, Mike? Can you see a situation where Conte would accept going into his last year of contract, or do you think that that's something that they will resolve and must be resolved?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to just touch on something very quickly with what Will said about our shirt sponsor for next year, with Pirelli potentially leaving. I personally put Pirelli tires on my car because of Inter, and if they leave, that means I'm taking them off and putting on whatever other tire we might bring in, or whatever that may be.
I don't think Samsung produced tires. You might need to.
Listen, I might have to get rid of my iPhone and get a Samsung Galaxy.
Happen. Yeah, that's not going to happen. I hate Android with a burning passion. So sorry.
But yeah, I put Pirelli tires on my car for the last 5 years. 4 sets on winter and summer tires just because of Inter. So if they leave, I'm going to be very upset. Anyway, so look very, very quickly on this. I don't think Conte's going anywhere. I don't think Marotta's going anywhere, and I don't think Suning's going anywhere. And I agree with you that it's not good to have Conte's contract up in a year and not do anything about it. So obviously something's going to be done in the next few months. I highly doubt that they're going to go into next year and just let his contract run out. That's my opinion. But I would definitely think that Conte would be extended in the next month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it may be. And because I do feel that things have changed, I think there was a lot of tension, 4, 5, 6 months ago, when things weren't that great. Things have changed. Everyone's happy right now. You see Conte on the sidelines. It's just that emotion. I freaking love it. And I just don't see him just packing up and say, okay, I've had enough. I've come here. I've won. It's time to leave. Kind of like what Mourinho did. No, I think he's going to stay. He's going to be here for a few more years, especially with the state of the rest of the league. You look at like Juve, they're on the downswing. Managers know these things in terms of what teams are going to. Juve was such a great team for so long, but they're not who they once were. Ronaldo's not going to be around for potentially, that could have been his last year, maybe one more, but he ain't getting better. And once he goes, their team isn't as good. So there's an opportunity here, especially with Milan being light years away. It seems like the only direct competition at this very moment is Atalanta, and it doesn't seem like they could have that final step. So there is opportunity to do not just one Scudetto but more. So I don't think there'd be a reason to leave in terms of his mentality. I think there's at every level, all three, management, ownership, coach, even for the players, they all want to be here, and I don't think that's going to change.
Well, let's hope that that's the case, because I think that the Inter are onto something here, exactly as Mo alluded to a little bit earlier today. I believe in this project. I believe in the way that it's come together. I think it's about tweaks, and if they can do the tweaks, Simi won't cost a lot of money, Di Marco won't cost a lot of money. The only really big investment you'll have to make is De Paul, and if that's not possible, well, then keep the midfield as it is and replace Ranocchia with Maximovic, then I'm fine, because I mean his contract expires too. So then I'm okay with everything, because I think Darmian's utility and D'Ambrosio's utility, and if you bring back Lucien Agumé, who's been doing really well at Spezia, is a huge talent, and he looks like he's extending his contract with Inter as well. I mean, we know that Conte does well with talented young players who do as he says, and give him the quality he needs. We've seen it with Pogba, we've seen it with Pastoni, Barella, we've seen it with Christensen at Chelsea, etc., etc. So he has no issues with youth. So we'll have to wait and see. But let's move on to the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip the piss out of, and criticize someone or something heavily in the world of football, starting with the negativity, which will be presented by Mr. Michael Gallo, this week's Moggi.
Look, we all saw the Super League fiasco couple weeks ago, and that's kind of led to a few other things, including in Manchester. What a debacle happened between United and Liverpool. As much as I love talking, this is such an Inter podcast, and I want to keep talking about the positivity stuff, but listen, we got to talk about what happened at this match. Obviously, all these United fans, maybe not all of them, but a certain group of them, were obviously upset about what happened with the Super League, and it's led to other things. And all of a sudden, they want the ownership out, but they went around the wrong way to kind of protest, in terms of they went on the field at Old Trafford and postponed the Manchester United versus Liverpool game that was supposed to happen, which it wasn't look, two of the biggest teams in the country, but at the same time, there wasn't that much at stake. I know Liverpool's kind of fighting for a potential 4th or 5th spot to make Champions League, but United doesn't really have much to play for, being in second place and can't catch City. But listen, there's a way to protest things and there's a way not to protest things. Just they didn't need to go onto the field and chant Glazers out, the American owners, and I understand that you kind of want your ownership to be in-house, but that's just not the way things are going on, especially in England, even in Italy now. There's a way to do things and a way not to do things, and I think they went around it the wrong way. Maybe they didn't like the fact that the last couple weeks, their voices didn't seem to be as heard, so they needed to step it up and go to, the heights of postponing a game, because they rushed the field at Old Trafford, one of the most sacred football pitches in the world. I don't know the state of what's going on in England, maybe to the extent that Will might have, but I do know that they could have done this differently, and there's no reason to get in the way of football when this could easily have been done away from the pitch. So Moggi of the week. I hate their fans, but these specific fans that if they want to call themselves fans, would be the Moggi of the week.
For sure. Let's move on to something much more comical. This week's Frog, which will be presented by Mr. William Beckman.
È clamoroso! Autogol di Ranocchia!
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure what to go for this week. And then Daniele Mari, the editor of FC Inter 1908, posted a picture that I think won the award hands down, not of him. So this week's Frog is Marcelo Brozovic's eyes.
What the hell was that?
So, he's posted a tweet, Daniele Mari, from a few hours ago on Monday, which I think will remain with me throughout my sleep this evening and for most of the week, because I think Brozovic looks like he hasn't slept for about 20 years in this picture. And he looks like he's been possessed by all the ghosts of all the banter era Inter players that have given us nightmares for the last 10 years. Looks very, very deranged. And I'm assuming that he has, let's say, celebrated Inter's title triumph in a very sort of full-on way. If you were hoping to buy any alcohol in the Milan region in the next month, then you're out of luck, because I think Brozovic has had all of it. judging by this. So, that somehow this man is, one of the most important players in this team that's just won the league. But, he does a very good job of hiding it because, we were talking a few weeks ago, weren't we, about the difference between footballing intelligence and sort of human intelligence. I think he's the picture boy for that sort of, or the poster boy for that school of thought. So, as Daniele said, just remember that you'll be able to tell your kids about the fact that you lived through the era of Marcelo Brozovic. So there we go. I think he gets the award for
it's on his Instagram stories. And I remember yesterday when everybody was out celebrating, the question on Twitter was, has anyone heard of Brozovic? Has anyone seen what's going on? And everyone was like, yeah, he's gonna have fun. And then today he put that video out of those eyes. I mean, I've been hungover in my life, but I don't think I've ever been anything close to what that is. It's still on his stories, so go check it out. It's like you said, I think he has had every beverage that contains alcohol in all of Milan or Lombardy.
He's been storing up for the last 8 months. When he knew Inter were onto a good thing, he's been stockpiling, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most. I've never seen a human being that hungover in my life. His eyes.
On the matter of the frog, obviously, I think we should take this moment to congratulate the man who gave us the frog, because there's only one player that was at the club the last time we won a trophy, and he's been through all sorts of hell in the last few years, and Andrea Ranocchia deserves to win Serie A, not for what he used to do in 2014-15, but for the way he's managed to rebuild his career without too much help from outside is honourable. I mean, he's not played much this season, but he played a couple of games recently and he was fine and he did his bit. He's never complained, and he deserves to drink as much alcohol as he wants. I don't know if he drinks, but
he played well. He played well this year too, and what? He never said anything. He was a starter for this team, and then he was relegated to the bench. He kept his mouth shut, and he did his job, and he did his thing from the bench. And when he was called upon, he did his job. And especially this year, I believe his last match they kept a clean sheet when he started. Good for him. I'm proud of him, especially because he got shafted. I believe it was one of the Italian roster when he was one of the best defenders in Italy at one point, but he got shafted a couple times. So good for him. I'm proud of him.
For sure. Let's. He's also one of the most nice people you can ever hope to meet. Andrea Ranocchia, an absolute gentleman on and off the pitch. Right. Let's move on to something much more positive. This week's Moratti, which we presented by Mr. Mohamed Nasser.
He works a lot. He's intelligent, and he surprises people sometimes with his ideas. Not easy to find one person of this qualities.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know where to begin this week. Really, I don't know. I'm overwhelmed. I think the Moratti of the week should be everyone and everything. Really, we've spoken about this being a real team effort beyond just the actual team that wears the jersey and steps onto the pitch or sits on the substitutes bench. Directors, managers, back office staff, again, everyone, but also fans who suffered. I mean, we on the group chat yesterday, was it, or today, this morning, I can't remember, we're listing all the names that we had suffered through watching wear the Inter jersey in the past 10 years. And
that game could have gone on for a while.
Oh man, that was awesome.
That was fun, actually.
I don't want to single out anyone in particular, but we've seen some.
I do. Kuzmanovic, Janem Villa, Dodo Pires, Juan Jesus. I mean, Thomas Rocchi.
Jonathan.
I believe in Jonathan. Yeah.
On the Gab and Jules show was talking about who's definitely been on our podcast a bunch of times and was always lovely. Was talking about how the fact that Inter average attendance pre-pandemic 60,000 people and hadn't won a single trophy in over 10 years in 10 years at the time pre-pandemic. it's unheard of to have this level of support for a club that has underachieved for so long, consistently underachieved for so long. We suffered through a great deal, but not only we. You know, I've mentioned earlier about my wife. You know, our significant others, our friends, our girlfriends, our boyfriends, our wives, our husbands, whoever, who've seen us drag through the mud as fans over the years, and then, you know, so really these last few 36 hours or 28, however many hours it's been since the final whistle at the Atalanta game, have been an amazing feeling, and really a feeling of absolute gratitude and vindication, and yeah. So everyone at the club, everyone around the world, everyone who supports Inter, even the Inter trolls on Twitter, you guys suck, but I love you, you know. So everyone, all the Interisti around the world, you know, it's a very special day. So I guess yeah, that's the Moratti for the week, the whole Interverse.
Amen. Right, that's all we had time for this week. I'd like to thank you, Michael. Thanks for joining us in this Scudetto pod.
Thank you for having me, guys. And I got to say, I'm disappointed that Mo decided not to give Rodrigo Palacio the Moratti of a week after becoming the oldest player to score a hat-trick in Serie A history. Yeah. But unfortunately, we had some, you know, important dealings with Inter winning the Scudetto, so that was a little bit more important. But anyways, thank you very much for having me, guys. And what a time, and let's hope to keep this going in the future.
Yes, for sure. Rodrigo Palacio obviously being one of the few highlights of that horrific decade of banter era. Mr. William Beckman.
Thank you to everyone who has listened to us throughout the season, and enjoy these last 4 games of the season, even if, you know, players that you don't like are going to be starting, such as Vidal and, you know, Vecino and all these things. We could have quite a starting 11 against Sampdoria on Saturday. We'll see what happens, but they've earned it. We've earned it. So yeah, let's make sure we don't have to wait another 184 episodes before recording the next Scudetto podcast. That's my wish.
No, exactly. Mr. Mohamed Nasser.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, thank you guys. Great to finally do this title-winning podcast. Amazing, and yeah, honestly, again, I really envision a lot of big things for this team. So hopefully, when we get into the next season cycle, we'll have a lot more to dream of. Built on the shoulders of these guys. So yeah.
For sure. Until next time, I'm your host Nimat Ali Rutsari, wishing you health, stay safe, listen to your authorities, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and enjoy the Scudetto, Campioni d'Italia, and sempre e solo Forza Inter.